Training and Technical Assistance Center, and we are talking today about partnerships and developing MOU, and we are going to open up here. And so I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us, and we're just going to say a quick word. Mujaneta pampalatska mado chikedes estiminetagi falaget emanejada afahan moa mado chikedada biagis mado chikedes. So I just want to thank you. My name is Anna Clough, and I work here at the Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. I'm Muskogee Creek and Uchee, and I work in our Resource Division for Law and Policy. And Natalie, introduce yourself. Natalie, are you online? And Natalie Stites is one of our Training and Technical Assistance Coordinators, and she works in the Resource Division for Law and Policy, and she is Cheyenne River Lakota, and she's going to be on today. So she is having a little bit of technical difficulty connecting, so we're going to continue on. She'll join us here shortly. So today we are going to talk about the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court and developing partnerships. We're going to have a brief overview of what the Healing to Wellness Court is for juvenile participants. We're going to discuss some of the partnerships that might arise in the development of a Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. And then we're also going to discuss the purpose and strengths of developing strong partnerships and the formal documents that can help support the engagement of partners. And so with that, I'm going to let Gandra Lovell and our staff give you a quick tech overview.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick review. If everyone on the line can please tell us who you are and what grantee program you're representing in the chat box below. Just type in, it's automatically going to respond back to everyone, so that way we can get an idea of who's all on the line. Also, in the presentation for download box, you will see the presentation today. You can download it in PDF form, or you can download the actual PowerPoint. At the end of the webinar today, we will be bringing up another screen for a survey link. We would like everyone to please take the time to fill out the survey link to let us know how today's webinar went and any improvements that we need to make on our end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gandra. Okay, so Gandra just asked, but if you could, we want to know, do you currently work in a wellness court setting, and if so, what is your role? And if you do not, let us know if you're just interested in learning more about juvenile healing to wellness, or if you currently work in a judicial system. We would love to know that. So I see Dorothy is calling in from California and Oregon. Terry, Shoshone Bannock, it's wonderful you're here. Thank you, guys. Melissa, Rosebud Sue. So we have a lot of people on today from all over the country. We're glad that you're here. And I just wanted to see if Natalie had been able to connect her audio yet before we proceed. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for sharing. Hi T, hi Tia Star. Okay, so Natalie's going to join us here in just a minute. I'm going to move on. Thank you all for sharing. You can continue to type in the chat box. We'll have a question and answer time at the end. And so if you have a question that comes to mind, please type it in. And then also at the very end, we will have a Q&A time. So if you want to hold your question,
So the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court is a problem-solving court that provides collaborative, therapeutic, and culturally integrative judicial processes for tribal youth. These are youth who are generally engaged in delinquent behavior that might be directly related to their addiction to alcohol or illegal substances. It may also be with youth who have, systematic engagement with the judicial system based on some of these behaviors that are related to substance use disorder. And so really it's just a healing environment that focuses on individualized treatment and judicial processes for tribal youth. And so what is the purpose? The purpose of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court is to provide for individual safety and community safety as well. The court is a rehabilitative court. The point is to produce autonomy for youth and for them to go on into adulthood, hopefully without the behavior that's related to substance use disorder or delinquent activity. And so the entire point of the court system is to produce a healing framework for these youth that are coming into the system and to continue to develop, as an individual as they move through the process. And so the hope is that youth who come into the system won't have future contact with the judicial system. So this is just a really brief diagram. The Healing to Wellness Court process is really involved. It's an in-depth process. There are many components that go into it, but we hope that this visual would provide you with a viewpoint of the many components that are involved. And so tribal custom, justice, intervention, and youth-focused activities are what are comprising the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. So why are partnerships important within the wellness court setting? The Healing to Wellness Court is uniquely collaborative by design. The processes that are going to be engaged within the court are going to be highly dependent upon the partnerships that are developed. This is both within the inner infrastructure and then with the external partners that are going to be involved. This court is very innovative in that there isn't the separation that you see in a normal court setting between the judge, judicial staff, such as prosecutors, defense attorneys, like the normal circumstances that we see. This is truly collaborative in that the judge and the team actively work together on an ongoing basis to provide case processes for youth. And so with that, partnership is absolutely integral to a successful Healing to Wellness Court. So ongoing, there's just going to be continuous development of the team partnerships as well as the external partnerships that may be developed. So as your team, if you are developing court, starts to come together, you'll notice that there are several areas where partners may come into play. And so we wanted to kind of break this down into the kind of partners that you might see within your own system, as well as those that we see in existing juvenile healing to wellness courts. So in many of the cases, we see a community advisory committee. This might also be called a steering committee. There are partners within the Wellness Court team, and this is the direct service providers. There are external partners such as cross-jurisdictional partners or other partners that provide services. There may be internal tribal partners. So these are programs that may be involved in providing services, but they may not be on the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court team. And then there are any other stakeholders. And so these are any kind of community members, the youth themselves, any other partners that you may see come into play as you develop your tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. So we first wanted to talk about the community. And the community itself is one of the biggest partners. If you are newly developing your project for a Healing to Wellness Court, the community is going to have input that is invaluable to developing and meeting the needs of the youth that are in your community. Their perspective is one of the most important perspectives in that they know what the needs are, and they know what the youth are doing, what kind of activities they're engaging in. They may know the areas within the community that may need more attention or don't need more attention. They know which youth are most in need of services, and they're the ones that are most likely to have their ear to the ground on knowing what the true needs are. And so utilizing forums to support community partnerships and developments is really important at the outset. If you were at our meeting last week here in Oklahoma, I think you heard from Natalie advising that it is really important to start at the beginning with a strong community engagement process, because that is vital when you're beginning your planning processes. So for many of you, you may be familiar with the Tribal 10 Key Components, and developing strong community partnerships is key component 1. And so with that, individual and community healing focus is one of the most integral parts of the system. And you should have input from anyone who's going to have contact with the system, anyone who may have input about the community, leadership, really what the needs are within the community. That is vital, and we know that other courts have flourished based on having strong partnerships with the community. So one of the ways that you can do this is through community assessment processes, public meetings, other local events that support getting the information about what your project is going to be and how you're going to develop your court. Once you have feedback from those processes, you can readily integrate that into how you're developing as a court system. And then continuously engage in the community as you embark on the development process is really important. And so through this process, I think that you'll find that you're able to identify who your key stakeholders are and who you may invite to be as part of the advisory committee. And so those are some of the strongest partners that you'll have as you begin to develop your Healing to Wellness Court. One of the lessons learned in developing a Healing to Wellness Court, especially that for juvenile healing to wellness, is to emphasize early outreach within the community. And so just to remember that what you're developing is not isolated, because it's directly serving the community, and it's going to directly impact the youth that are in your community. And so establishing this early on and understanding that it's important early on is really important. This can enhance the public trust within the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, and just, give more confidence into what you as a team are doing as you're trying to develop and implement the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. So I just want to pause there quickly and see if there was any questions. I know that we just wanted to go back and give just a brief overview. I know some of you may not have been able to listen to our last webinar, but that was an introduction to the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. And so we didn't want to get too far backwards into information that we've already moved through, but if you have any questions just about implementing, we're happy to try to answer those questions as well. So we are going to move on to the team. So many of you will be developing a team to support the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. And the team itself is going to collaboratively engage in serving all of your youth participants. And that collaborative engagement is what provides a holistic method for working with these youth, mostly because the team itself is going to be multidisciplinary. Many times they come from different departments, and there's going to be ongoing communication and cross-training opportunities for those of you who are going to be working newly with, maybe you're going to be working with a new department or with a new provider, somebody who you haven't engaged with before. And so there's just that opportunity to develop a relationship to serve the youth. You are truly going to be probably some of the strongest partners within the court system. That's because as a team, you're going to have that ongoing engagement with the youth, and you're going to have that ongoing engagement with each other to provide services. And so because you're coming from different backgrounds and it's a comprehensive team, it's important to remember that even though you're all from probably the same tribal entity, you're working in several different departments. And so MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, those can be really helpful in supporting the communication and the collaboration that's going to be going on, as well as all of the information sharing. And so even though you're all working towards the same purpose, you all have the same goals, it's important as a team to understand, this is my role, this is my responsibility, this is what I'm going to do as part of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, and just documenting that and making sure that others understand what each role and responsibility is going to be is really helpful to the process, because then there's just that expectation of known roles and responsibilities. So this is just a small diagram of a Healing to Wellness Court team. And within each of these bubbles that you'll see, those can be broken down even further. This is just to give you a picture of what the team looks like and how these partners might work together. And so within the judicial staff section, you see that that could include the judge, if you have a prosecutor on your team, or defense counsel. You often have a wellness court coordinator. That person might serve in an administrative role. They may also serve as the person who gathers all the information and then presents it to the team, or they may be a person that also makes recommendations depending on what their background or what their supporting role is within the team. You will often have a police department or a probation officer. That person provides the monitoring aspect of this, of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. We see social services, cultural programs. Those programs are generally part of the team. We have mental, physical, and spiritual health here, and you may not necessarily have a physical primary care person joining into every team call, but that person may play a role because they're going to provide the team information on how best to serve the youth participant. And then we have a substance use treatment service provider, and this is the person that really is going to be speaking to what level of need there is within the case for the particular youth, and then also is going to be making recommendations for what kind of treatment would be best. So taking the time to formally document what these roles and responsibilities are is very important. And then secondarily, developing intra-agency MOU to support the relationship that you have with all of these people is vital, so that you all know and understand how you're going to work together to provide services for the youth. So I think we've spoken to this. It's important to develop and formalize how you're going to support the infrastructure of the court. And then individual team members should support the development of whatever curriculum or practices are going to be engaged within the process so that everyone understands what roles and responsibilities are. And this is really important because we know that there's staff turnover. We know that changes are made sometimes after an administration change. So just to plan and prepare in advance for any kind of change that could come in the future, it's important to, during the planning process, think about these things and to plan for them and plan well. And so it's our hope that, you know, as you start to develop your partnership documents, that you would just ensure that anyone who comes on in the future can understand what would my role and responsibility be if I were newly hired in a few years. So Natalie, do you want to share?
Can you hear me now, Anna?
Yes, I can.
Yay.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. I'm sorry for my technical difficulties here. On our next slide, we're talking about an example from a tribal community who has worked on their partnership development to support positive outcomes. Key partners during their planning phase included the tribal police chief, the substance abuse treatment providers, the mental health service providers, as well as health services, social services, and the tribal council. And they stress that the formation of strong partnerships with tribal and non-tribal agencies has been a key to the success of the Healing to Wellness Court. The tribal court has stressed the importance of effective communication and information sharing across jurisdictions. And that again is from the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Healing to Wellness Court on their partnership development. On our next slide, we have other tribal intra-agency partners because there's an emphasis on holistic case management services and processes. These ancillary partners may support additional case services for youth partnerships. You can include these folks within your core team or your wellness team or in an advisory committee capacity or a stakeholder committee capacity as well. Creative partnerships are encouraged and are key in many of the different communities. I know in some communities it's very important to have your schools at the table, your education providers, workforce job training and placement, any type of tribal youth or prevention programs, food sovereignty initiatives and environmental programs, elders programs, community services, and cultural services. And really any type of service provider that is engaging or can engage and support youth participants in your program. Addressing the need, documenting roles and responsibilities of internal partners. To increase the likelihood of ongoing collaboration and cooperation, the tribal internal partners should define their roles and responsibilities beyond the verbal and beyond an oral understanding. Using formal documents to support these defined roles can be very helpful. Some of these might include a letter of support, the intra-agency memorandum of understanding, which we will get into in detail, letters of commitment, and also formal contracts, in particular with vendors or service providers who will be providing services that require payment, such as drug testing or perhaps different types of assessments or whatever else you may need to contract for.
Thank you, Natalie. So we wanted to go a little bit more in depth on each of those types of documents. And so an MOU is the written memorialization of an agreement. And sometimes it can also be called an MOA. In some instances, that would be called a memorandum of agreement. Depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, language might be different. And so we wanted to just stick with one today, and that's an MOU. MOU are generally non-binding. And so I know that we could get really deep into legal justifications of whether something's going to be binding or not, or reliance, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to assume in your jurisdiction, like many others, that an MOU is not a legally binding document. It's merely to address mutually agreed and respected terms by and between parties. And your team should review any administrative procedures that are required by your tribal law or ordinances. So if your tribal legal department requires you to go through them for any kind of MOU, you'll want to address that. If there's anything in tribal statute regarding any kind of agreements that are made even within the tribe, it's important for you to talk about that with your legal services provider or with your tribal leadership. Binding contracts, everyone pretty much knows what those are. They're formal agreements that hold a legal status based on your jurisdiction's laws and ordinances. And so, like Natalie said, these are going to be put in place whenever you're working with somebody who might be receiving payment. It does not mean that you may not want to have an MOU with them also, but if you are exchanging funds, it's important for you to know what is going to assist you best legally. So if you have not developed an MOU before, you may not know all the components that go into that. And so generally an MOU is going to have a purpose and scope. So, what is this MOU about? It's going to speak to any legal authority. So if there's a legal authority for the establishment of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, you would want to include that in there. It's going to include the parties that are involved. It will document the date that you've agreed on the terms. It will acknowledge respective duties, roles, responsibilities of everyone who is going to be a part of the MOU. It will include signatures, acknowledgments, and it generally should include a process by which you can amend or terminate the MOU. And it may include anything else that your team or your tribe or the partner agency thinks that it's important to be included in there. And so I have a link here at the bottom. This is an example of an intra-agency MOU. And if you want to click on that link when you download the PowerPoint and the PDF there in the presentation box, you can go to that link. You can look at that. There is a pretty solid example of an intra-agency MOU. And I just want to speak to the importance of, even if you're dealing with a department that is in your tribal offices, it's important for everybody to understand what their roles are going to be throughout the process, because, this is hopefully a sustained court for your tribe. And so, this isn't just a one-time thing. It's going to be ongoing and developing these partnerships. And so just to ensure that everyone understands, how are we working together and how are we doing it well? I think, having a good foundation for that is really important. So I encourage you to go to that link. I encourage you to read through that. It's a good example. There's a lot of others online that you can look at, but that might be a good starting point for you. So additional considerations, if you're working in a tribal community, the MOU should also address confidentiality. And so with many of your partners, those might be health providers or other providers that have other requirements regarding confidentiality. So you may want to address that within the MOU. It should account for the specific participation. And so some tribal agencies that you're working with or different departments, they might have a higher level role within the court system. And then some may have just kind of an ongoing participatory role. So maybe you do want to engage your tribal environmental program if you have one. Maybe that might be a creative partnership, but you don't necessarily need them to be a core team member. And so just defining what level of role they're going to play as you move forward, that might be a really good starting point for a conversation. And then in anticipation of future staffing turnover, it may be helpful when you're developing an MOU to use general identifiers rather than naming specific individuals. And this is helpful because if you have a specifically named provider, you don't want to have to go backwards and have to amend your MOU anytime someone's going to change. Or maybe there's a department where many people provide the same service, and so it's not necessary to name a specific person. It's better just to name that particular office or that particular provider. And then if you want to, you can include a list for alternate providers in the instance that you do need to name an individual.
Tribal intra-agency partnerships. These are some additional considerations. Cultural interventions and partnerships are a unique characteristic of the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court concept, and incorporating your traditional practices and tribal lifeways are important aspects of the success of your program. And so to that, we want to note that particularly in terms of inviting partnership from your community representatives, from your elders, from your representatives, and from your cultural and spiritual leaders. You may want to use your own customs when you want to approach your potential partners. So you may want to provide a gift or an offering. In my community, tobacco is often offered to elders or cultural or spiritual leaders in order to gain their commitment. And when they accept that gift of tobacco, that means they are committed to your efforts and will support you. So I think that that's an important part of considering. You have your institutional partners and agency partners, who may require a different approach. They may require a formal letter or of invitation and so forth. But in terms of perhaps some of your tribal program directors, your elders, and your community and youth participants, you may want to consider or you should consider offering a traditional gift or offering in order to gain their participation.
Thank you, Natalie. And we know that that's going to be, unique to every community. And so, we'd hope that you would work with your team on, what those specific offerings or gifts are going to be and who you're choosing to offer those to. And so moving on to external partners and cross-jurisdictional partnerships, you're going to have your internal team. And so internal team, internal departments, those things that exist within the tribal sphere. And then you may have external and cross-jurisdictional partnerships. And so your external partners may include those non-tribal partners that are going to provide supportive services within the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. And like Natalie said earlier, that could be a testing facility. It may be a mental health services provider, maybe a substance use service provider, any provider that is not within the tribal sphere. You may have cross-jurisdictional partners. And so we know in many juvenile healing to wellness courts and many adult healing to wellness courts, tribes have been able to successfully negotiate referral processes with outside agencies, outside counties, and state partners. And we know that the point of this court system really is to provide access to services for tribal youth. And so to provide expansive services within your location and your area, if you have youth that are engaged in an outside court system, it is really important to invest time in developing external partnerships so that you are able to get referrals for those youth to come into your court system. And so we know that that can be a challenge for many communities. However, there are many communities that have navigated that, and there are examples of the process for how to do that. And so our hope is that you would be able to develop a process with your community partners to get strong referral systems going for youth to come into your court system. And so establishing formal agreements with these external partners is helpful. It's helpful to the services that you're going to offer. It's helpful to the youth. It can help with increasing the capacity to provide services to the youth and to give comprehensive treatment plans for the youth that are involved within your Healing to Wellness Court. So external partners that you're going to be engaging in, well, we've said this earlier, that might be exchanging goods and services. Those might need a contractual agreement rather than an MOU. And so think treatment providers, screening and assessment, other necessary supportive system provision. External partners that are providing in-kind services, maybe a nonprofit agency that you want to work with, or a county cross-jurisdictional partner, those may be engaged through the use of an MOU. You should consult with your team and your leadership, because we know that in many communities, negotiating an agreement with an outside partner may involve working with your tribal leadership. And so it's important for you to look at the laws and ordinances within your own community so that you understand what the process is going to be to start an MOU conversation. And then also you want to engage your tribal leadership and let them know, here's the work that we're doing, and here's why an MOU with the county is going to support that work. And so really having your tribal leadership on board at the outset is helpful to this process. And so just by engaging your leadership early on and informing them that this is a very helpful step in engaging outside partners is really important. So interagency MOU, which are those with external partners, are not going to differ greatly from intra-agency MOU. They're going to include many of the same components, and the only additional components that I think should be maybe applied as a big difference is maybe some judicial, some language on jurisdiction. There may be some language on or recitals based on what the relationship is going to be, how information is going to flow between the parties. Whatever partner you're working with that's an external partner may have some specific ways of how they're able to share information and what information can be shared. And so it's not going to differ greatly from an intra-agency MOU, just in that the process may be different. And so if you'll see at the bottom of the screen, when you download from the pod, if you want to go to this link later, this is an example of an Alaska State tribal village model. It's an MOU that was addressing juvenile diversion, and I think it's a really good example of an external type of MOU that addresses what the purpose is. They were diverting youth from the state into tribal communities and villages. And it really lays out the information nicely so that you can get a good solid example of how to draft an external MOU. And really, when it comes down to it, it's going to be dependent on the specific relationship and partnership. However, obviously being able to see an example is very helpful. So I hope that you'll look at that particular example when you get some time. And, as always, you can contact myself and the TA Center, and we can provide you with a few more examples of these kinds of MOU. So as far as, sorry, I'm having a little bit of what's here. Interagency MOU, there are some pretty specific considerations when you're developing an external partnership. And one is that your team should remain engaged in the process. We know that external partnerships can take a lot of time. And so, Natalie, I didn't know if you had some thoughts on that since you have worked at a programmatic level.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. This can be, it really is dependent on the agency that you're seeking partnership with. I know that, for example, when you are trying to enter into an MOU with the Indian Health Service, with the unit or hospital that's local to your community, they often have quite a bureaucratic process for such efforts. And so that can take time in order to, deliver an MOU that is completed and signed. So there, the timeliness, the size of the agency that you're partnering with. Sometimes if you're partnering, with agencies that are regularly entering into MOUs for these type of services and coordination, often that program person can sign that MOU and, and you can enter into it quite quickly. And so, inquiring with your partners and putting a plan in place for these partnerships, should consider the agency specific, that you're seeking a partnership with, because it can take time. In addition to that is really, like Anna said earlier, is you want to bring in your tribal leadership early into this process, and, find out what is the local process that you yourself as a program would be subjected to, following in terms of getting MOUs approved. Some tribes require that the tribal council resolve to enter into MOUs, and some will allow their programs to enter into, service specific type of MOUs. And so those considerations should be tackled early on in your process and should be considered by the team as a whole, for their respective organizations and entities as you move forward and plot out your partnership for your wellness program.
Right, and I I wanted Natalie to share that because I know that in some communities, if it takes a more impressive effort to engage an outside partner, I just don't want people to be discouraged in how long the process can take because in developing an external partnership with the county, for instance, might have your own leadership to engage. You may have county leadership to engage, but really you're all working towards the same goal, which is to provide individual wellness for these youth, and then obviously to increase community safety. And so, really going to these partners with that message, I think increases the likelihood of solidifying a partnership as you move forward. That would be my hope. I don't know if that's the case in with every external partner, but the message of being able to engage to provide safer communities for everyone really is where we would go.
And some exciting partnerships could be created even, say for instance, there may be a pool of tribal youth who are on probation through the federal system, and it may be worthwhile to look into how you might serve some of those through the wellness court proceedings and program. And that sort of partnership might take a little bit more intelligence gathering, so to speak, before you enter into that. And certainly it requires conversations.
So we wanted to share one of the funded projects that we're working with now, but had a pre-existing juvenile healing to wellness court, is that of the White Earth Nation. And we had a dialogue with them last year, and really what was successful for them was going to their partners with the message of here's what our plans are, here's what we have in place now as far as infrastructure, and here's where we're wanting to go. And so by meeting with their local police department, with local judicial staff, they were able to really get the MOU process started. And when they got that MOU process implemented and they had referrals coming in, they really have had a lot of success having, youth that were engaged in the county now engaged within their system. And they developed processes and protocols to engage and to work with their the co-judicial staff. And so one of their county prosecutors is actually a part of their tribal juvenile healing to wellness court team. Another example of how you might work with the county partner is another tribe that has had a juvenile healing to wellness court, Cherokee Nation. They've also been able to have court in the county, but have their healing to wellness court staff actually working within the court. And so there are a lot of ways that you can collaborate with external partners. It's just going to be how creative can your team be. If you don't have referrals coming in, is that a partnership where you want to say, hey, can we have court within your court system? There's nothing stopping you from developing any kind of creative process that's going to help serve the youth in your community. So as far as developing these partnerships and how you can serve the youth that are in your community, partnerships are going to contribute to the overall framework of your juvenile healing to wellness court for all the reasons that we previously stated. But more importantly, whatever partnerships you have in place are really going to serve as, this is how our court is structured, this is how we operate, and these are the partners that we brought into play to provide services for the youth. And so really all of your partners are going to be that constructive framework for operations. If you develop partnerships as you go on, it can help enhance your service delivery and your court capacity. We know in a lot of communities that many of the team members may have other roles and responsibilities. And so you might be the wellness court coordinator, but you might also be the part-time court clerk, or your probation officer, he may be one of the regular staff within the police department. And so only part of his time is devoted to serving on the wellness court. And so by understanding the differing capacity levels of the team members and by increasing partnerships, that in turn is going to increase the capacity for the juvenile healing to wellness court. And so really being creative with the people that you have within the tribe, and then also exploring external partnerships, is only going to increase how you're able to carry the load of work that goes into the juvenile healing to wellness court. As well, building positive partnerships is going to increase longevity and sustainability. And this is because it's going to increase that community buy-in, and it's really going to speak to having a framework in place for partnerships regardless of funding stream. And so when you're able to have those partnerships in place, and maybe those that provide in-kind services, even if funding were to not be in place in the future, you still have built that relationship and that partnership, and you can continue to refer youth for services regardless of whether you have funding for the court system or not. And so it's just buy-in from the community, buy-in from your partners, and continuing to address the needs of youth. And so I know we wanted to leave time for questions. And so we just want to review some of the things we've talked about, which is that developing strong partnerships is key to successful implementation of a juvenile healing to wellness court. The team should work together to identify the core and supportive partners, and you can formalize the agreements that you want to make with these partners through MOU, through letters of support, letters of commitment, or other types of agreements. There's no one way to engage a partner, but there are these formal documenting ways of at least addressing how those partnerships are going to come into play. The team can utilize external and cross-jurisdictional partners. You want to memorialize your roles and responsibilities with both internal and external partners. And then you should remain engaged when pursuing these partnerships. And Natalie, I didn't know if you had anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I did want to share a point or some information, is that when you're engaging and pursuing these partnerships, these partnerships can lend themselves to other types of initiatives that you will need to partner around the tribal youth for, and increasing that capacity. For instance, when the grant is when the grant period is over, those uh, referral services and agreements around those type of there's not a cost to that, and so that can continue to increase your capacity, and it can be a measure of sustainability that you continue to pursue, and work with your partners on a formal and informal levels. I think too, Anna, it's important to note that the idea is not just uh, the formal aspects to it, though that does document it and set forth, mutual agreement. But it's also the idea of, you're sitting at your desk and you can pick up the phone and you can call your partner and you can discuss or intervene in regards to an individual tribal youth, at any point. So it really is about building partnerships, building relationships, so that you are able to, wrap around that tribal youth that you're serving through your core program. Thank you.
Exactly. So we just wanted to give some time. If you have questions, please, you can type those in the chat box and we will answer as many as we have time for. We wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. Also, we had a question about whether the audio would be available, and when this webinar is archived, it will have the audio with it. We encourage you to download the presentation materials that are in the box here below. It has both the PDF and the PowerPoint version of the materials. So we see, I see Gerald saying monitoring attendance currently and truancy matters and advocating for parents and students. This is the next step for healing. And yes, I think we totally agree with that. Developing that partnership with the school, and developing that partnership with educators and understanding, how to serve youth that are involved in, they're missing a lot of school. They're not progressing. That is a really important partnership. And so those of you who are working with schools, school-based partnerships, those are some of the people who have their ear to the ground on really what youth are experiencing. And just as Natalie typed, we have resources through the TTA Center. You can email us. We are absolutely supportive of any of the work that you're doing to develop partnerships. We can assist you with, if you need more assistance working with the school or partner, we're happy to assist you with that. So let's see. Again, if you want to ask a question, you can type in the chat box. We do have everyone's lines muted, so if you have a question, you'll just type it down there in the chat box. And if you have questions, I know that we tried to include some of the resources that we've talked about. They're at the end of the PowerPoint. And so if you go through that resource list, many of those resources also have information about developing partnerships. One of the resources I want to draw your attention to is a planning guide for starting a juvenile drug court. And while this is not tribal specific, there really is a lot of valuable information in that planning guide. And the link is included on the resource page. And so that planning guide also reiterates the importance of developing strong partnerships. And so I think that you'll find that really helpful. And as far as engaging your community, there's a couple of resources on that page. One is from the Native American Community Development Institute. That's specific to tribal communities. And then there's another resource. It's called the Community Toolbox. That's not tribal specific. However, it is a really great tool if you're looking for ways to engage your community. I hope that you will check out both of those links because I have found them to be really helpful in a lot of the work that we're doing. So I see a question about, do any of your communities have an issue? I'm sorry, I'm trying to see the whole question. from Terry Yackley. Do any of your communities have an issue with separation of powers that limits how much the Justice Department wants to involve the council? And so I think this is really kind of going out to the group. So do any of your communities, of those of you that are joining us from a tribal community, have issues with separation of powers that limit how much the Justice Department wants to involve the council? And I know that some people may chime in if they don't. I know that that is a barrier that comes up. However, it is really important, like we have said, to engage tribal leadership who have very distinct separations of powers. This is an innovative and a uniquely collaborative judicial process. And so when we talk about separation of powers, I know that that can come up for some tribal communities in that how they work together and how well they work together. However, because it is so unique and because the hope is for individual and community wellness, my hope would be that communities could overcome maybe some of those obstacles just through forum and dialogue about the purpose and scope of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court. And maybe that can help to overcome some of these barriers. So I hope that maybe that.
This is Natalie again. Just to comment on Terry's question. The separation of powers can often be held up as a shield to prevent partnership. However, the separation of powers has a specific legal meaning, and that specific legal meaning does not prevent partnerships from being created between your judicial department or your justice department and your council or tribal programs necessarily. And so, ensuring that the legal reality of a separation of powers, which not all tribes necessarily have, that certainly should not be raised as a barrier to the partnership. So, and if it is, we stand ready with technical assistance to help you all tackle that type of barrier. Thank you.
Right, and just as a follow-up to that, really, when we talk about partnership and MOU development, documenting the relationship is one thing. Then there's also, maybe some infrastructural things that need to happen as well. So, like I know within the team itself, because you're talking about ex parte communication, which is, under normal circumstances, a judge wouldn't normally confer with a prosecutor or with a defense counsel. However, within the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court context, you have that open communication and dialogue because you're all working toward a specific case goal for a youth. And so I know that many Healing to Wellness courts have MOU in place by and between their partners, and they also have specific consents for release of information within that inter team, so within the tribe itself. And so I think it's important to say, there are a lot of other steps that might need to happen when you're developing an MOU with a specific partner. And so I don't want to leave that off, that, addressing and developing a list of possible partners, and then also addressing how do we engage with each of these partners. And then additionally, what types of consents or releases for information are going to be necessary so that, we're remaining ethical and that we're all working towards the same end goal. So I just want to encourage you, before we were to close out, there's a survey at the bottom of the screen, and it would really be helpful to us if you would take the survey before you close. Your browser will open a new window and take you to our survey. We hope that you'll complete that. It's really helpful to us to know the information that we're sharing, how we can make it better, and how we can share comprehensive information that's going to support your needs. So I see a question from Daniel Hana. How can some juveniles get services although they may not be enrolled with the tribe but can prove their parent is a member of the tribe that has a juvenile healing to wellness court? Have any other tribes dealt with this, or has it arose before? So how can some juveniles get services although they may not be enrolled with the tribe but can prove their parent is a member of the tribe that has a juvenile healing to wellness court? So I know that there are some consortium courts maybe that have service juveniles that come in from other tribes. This also comes down to your own tribal jurisdictional setup. And so I know that we can go back and research some specific tribes that maybe have experienced this and provide you with some one-on-one. Natalie, I can't specifically think of any tribes that are right now. A lot of the funded projects that we're dealing with are newly implemented. Not all, but many. But I'm only
Sure.
thinking of like one consortium right now.
Right. The consortium in the California. I think this can get very challenging, this question of enrollment. I think number one is that most of these federal grant programs, they are available to everyone, to every individual, regardless of tribal enrollment, national origin, race, or gender, or sexuality. And I think that's important to note. And then also it goes to the eligibility criteria that you may all identify, or in terms of different entry points into the program. If tribal enrollment is a requirement, then you're going to have to address this issue. However, in terms of, like, say for instance, for federal purposes, if you go and gain health services, usually the parent being enrolled in a tribe is sufficient for a juvenile to receive healthcare services, for example. So I think it's important to note that these funds are available to to serve tribal youth who are not necessarily enrolled in the tribe that the court is operating in. And certainly, from a jurisdictional standpoint, in an Indian juvenile, regardless of enrollment, would, the federal government would have jurisdiction over them, say in a federal proceeding. So I don't think this is something that many tribes that I have read in the literature or have heard from personally struggle with, in terms of who is eligible for their program. And I anecdotally I can note that there's an operative program in California that even has accepted non-tribal youth on a racial level or on a political level, but who nonetheless are members of the community that they're serving, and they have been admitted into these type of programs.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen that come up generally. No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in. We're going to encourage you to fill out our survey. It's at the bottom, and then download the presentation so that you can go back to any of the links that we mentioned today. And so if we don't have any more questions, then we'll be ready to close out here in just a second. Okay. With that, I think we're going to close out the Q&A portion of the webinar. We thank you all for joining us today. We wish you all the best. If you're newly planning, we hope that this webinar has supported your planning processes. And if you're joining us just to learn more about juvenile healing to wellness and tribal services, we hope that we were able to meet your needs today. If you would fill out our survey, we would greatly appreciate it. And we hope you all have a good rest of your work week. And you can contact us at the center anytime. Our email addresses are included below. Center contact information is in the PowerPoint. And so feel free to contact us at any time for anything. And I will thank you. Natalie, do you have anything else?
Just thank you for joining us today, and please follow up with your individual TA coordinators like myself if you have any questions or need additional resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good day. Goodbye.